Welcome to Undercomplicating Stuff, where we, two psychologists and coaches with a combined 40 years of experience, share our insights to help undercomplicate important topics. A friendly reminder that this video is meant for conversational and entertainment purposes only. Please see the information section of this video for additional resources. Dr. Gedeon, introduce yourself.
Thanks, Julie. I'm Stacey Gedeon. I'm a health psychologist and the founder and CEO of a healthcare consulting and professional coaching business. And how about you, Dr. Radico?
Hi, I'm Julie Radico. I am a psychologist, a coach, an author, and a speaker. And our question today is, how might I navigate a conflict with my boss? So we have a video on navigating conflicts with a coworker, and we realized that there's a lot of nuance to that. There's also a lot of nuance and potential differences in when you're trying to navigate like a hierarchical conflict. And so, thinking about this, one of the first things I would encourage people to do is to really check in about the conflict. So, check in with yourself, like reflect on like, is the conflict real? So, are you frustrated because your boss is giving you feedback that's their job to do as your boss? Or are you frustrated for a whole number of valid reasons that your boss is maybe giving you feedback that feels unfair or is asking you to do things that aren't within your job description or things that really are outliers to what you would expect or what feels normal or healthy for your workspace? But really taking a moment to be like, oh, am I unhappy in this job because I just don't like what I'm doing? Or is this really a conflict or an issue that I'm having with my boss?
Related to that, as we're trying to sort out, is this a conflict? Isn't it a conflict? Let's say something happens and boom, all of a sudden you are just really activated. So maybe you're really frustrated or angry at something that happened or something you heard, and you think, boy, I'm just going to go right in and I'm going to tackle this and sort this out. We really encourage you to pause, and it's hard to do. But notice, are you regulated emotionally? Are you feeling like your heart's pounding and your muscle tension is high? Really notice if that's what's going on and take some time to regulate that. So it might be going into the bathroom and taking some deep breaths or using mindfulness, washing your hands, but something where you can take some time and not react. So we want a response. We don't want a reaction that isn't thought through and we kind of can't take back maybe what we said or what we even assumed as to what was the intention of what we were told by our bosses. That's something that's critical to do. And also, there are probably very few things that you need to address immediately. So you can buy yourself some time to sort through what might be going on and really how you want to approach it.
It's really uncomfortable for us to be in situations where we feel like somebody who their job is to oversee us is misusing that power. And so we want to make sure that when we're reacting to facts and things that are objective, things that we can measure, things that we can see. And one of the things that is a reality here is you might be in situations where you're getting feedback from a supervisor, a boss, a leader of some capacity that you feel like what they're telling you isn't based in reality or isn't fair or isn't measurable. And that can make it really hard to be like, what are you talking about? But not have those words come out of your mouth. Keep your cool in those moments to go, okay, could you give me some examples of what we're talking about? Could you help me understand and see what you're seeing? And there are realities in which your boss might not have your best interest at heart. We don't always work in perfect scenarios where our bosses take accountability when things don't go right. And so there are scenarios where people who you are working on a team under might not want to be the one who gets in trouble or who gets the perceived blame or shame from something going wrong. And that speaks a whole bunch to like if people are getting blamed and shamed to like a negative work culture, which we will talk about in an upcoming video. But knowing that it is important to check in with yourself to not respond just like negatively or lash out, which can be really hard. We get it. But also to recognize and then like reality test, like, where is this possibly coming from? Are there things that I could take accountability for here, or are there other explanations of this might be a scenario where somebody has to hold the responsibility for what went wrong, and my boss doesn't want to be the one to do that. And so maybe it's coming on me in a way that isn't completely fair.
One thing that I encourage people to do is if there is a trusted coworker that you could maybe do a little bit of reality testing. So it's not so much, oh, I can't believe this happened, or did you hear that in the meeting? But really kind of trying to take a step back almost as an observer versus being the one that is in the maybe discussion that's uncomfortable or the feedback that was presented at a meeting that felt very critical, and not asking the person to blame, but just, okay, what did you notice? I had sort of an unusual reaction to that, and I'm wondering what you saw. So that can be something. However, be very cautious of the person that constantly runs to you with juicy tidbits of gossip, because you can bet anything that they are doing the same thing to you. So be very, very careful if you are choosing a colleague to do that with. You can also use a trusted friend or colleague outside of your work situation to run it by and maybe get some feedback. And to your point earlier of we all need to own our own stuff and the role that we play in any conflicts that we have. You had mentioned sort of the dynamics of the workplace, and we know that people have come to us where they're feeling scapegoated, that they are the ones with the targets on their back, and if something goes wrong, they're the people that kind of get the arrows pointed to. So that's a certain dynamic you can look for. You can also look if an organization tends to have favorites. And if you work in an organization that has favorites, and everybody knows kind of who that favorite is. And there's not much you're going to do to change that. Um, we also need to be mindful if it's getting to the point where maybe it's their own insecurities as a boss, or they want to not be seen as less than, whatever the issue might be. Again, not something you're going to change, but there are some other things that you can do to maybe move this forward. And being cautious, if it gets to the point where you feel like you're being bullied or harassed, you could consider going up the chain of command, or within the organization, the HR department. Be cautious, but that could be a resource if you're feeling comfortable doing that. Another option is to kind of go to your boss's boss, but I tell you, that's really scary. So maybe if you're getting to that point, or if you've tried to talk to your boss to really clarify things and get an idea about behaviorally what's expected from you and it doesn't seem to go anywhere, it also might be a time to consider whether that's the workplace for you.
There's so many possible pitfalls in how these scenarios can play out. And it's hard because we're specifically talking about boss relationships. So this person has authority over you. That's the nature of what we're talking about. They are the ones who are giving you feedback. They are the ones who are maybe doing your annual review or your biannual review. They are the ones who could decide if you get promoted or get a raise. And sometimes there are chains of command where there's a boss above your boss or a boss above your boss's boss. You could keep going. And along with like taking care of yourself in whatever the scenario is and checking in with people around you that you trust and doing so in like a professional way, it is also keeping track and trying to document and keep receipts. This is a phrase that we often talk about. But if you are going to have a conversation with your boss, or you have gotten feedback that you feel like is actionable, like, oh, okay, they just told me I need to do this differently. And there's nothing in writing, there's nothing that's saying, like, okay, yes, I've agreed to work on this. I'm going to try to make improvements. I want to do my best here. Then you create that receipt. Send a follow-up email, send a message, a memo, whatever your system uses to say, hey, thank you for having this conversation with me today. I know we talked about this, this, and this. here's how I'm going to approach each one of those things. My plan is to follow up with you in such and such a time and check in on how you think it's going. Like creating this accountability for yourself so that say the worst comes to worst. And I've heard of scenarios where people get feedback that feels really unfair and there's not a lot of evidence for it, and they end up figuring out that the company just wanted to push them out. And so, like, as mindful as we are that we're not lawyers, we're not giving any sort of legal advice. Like, we are here from a perspective of like, how might you navigate this in a thoughtful way of taking care of yourself, but also being really mindful and just with the realities of you gotta like take care of yourself in the way of document, document. When you go through training as a clinician in many different professions, you get told again and again and again, if you didn't document it, it didn't happen. So document. It's just a not a, kind of like, oh, I'm out to get you, but just to like test your reality to make sure that you are holding yourself accountable and to knowing that like no matter what happens and how things play out, you did what you said you were going to do. You tried your best. You made a good effort. So, like whatever is going to help you feel reassured in that whatever the outcome is, that you did what you could.
That's so important. And I do like that we recommend documenting things or keeping receipts, not only because it does help us kind of take a step away from it and go back to it and maybe have a different viewpoint on what we experienced. And down the road, if something should get really big, you have information there to refer to. The other thing, though, is again, being able to just sort of debrief and unload in a safe way through documenting can be very, very helpful. And maybe you have a version that's just really where you're venting on paper. And then you have a nicer version with maybe dates and times and people and things like that. And so it can be used a lot for just managing those emotions that are likely to get created. So when I think about some key takeaways from today, there are a lot. The one I'm mindful of and I have to work on is regulating my emotions and my physiology prior to taking action. And that's easy to say, hard to do, but there are quick tips that we've talked about before and in other videos and even today that you can take a few minutes, if not overnight, where you can kind of get a better sense and be mindful in the present moment. It's really hard when we're experiencing conflict with a supervisor or a boss. Our minds can kind of go to the nth degree and get really scared and anxious and hyped up. So taking care of yourself, as you had said, and again, trying to be curious as best as you can. That will result more often in clarity versus defensiveness, which can escalate things. So again, easy to say, hard to do. And the last takeaway would be what you said about behaviorally based examples when someone's asking you to work on something.
My takeaway is that conflict is hard. If you are having a conflict with your boss, the magical thing that we would want is for it to be just a big misunderstanding and for there not to actually be any real conflict. However, there are times where you have conflict. There's been so many situations that people have experienced with so much nuance that it's hard to come up with here are the perfect things to do or say or think about. So my thoughts are for people to take care of themselves, to lean on your self-care, to trust yourself in doing what's healthy for you, to reach out for support, whether that's to people you trust within the same company, whether that's people in your life outside of work, whether that's professional support. Find places where you feel safe to be able to process and talk about and get through whatever is coming up for you based on this conflict, because it's really hard. So, if this topic resonated with you, please share it with somebody that you care about. Also, please like, comment, subscribe. You can reach us on our YouTube page or LinkedIn profiles with questions that you have that you want us to address in future episodes.